Okay, hello, welcome along. This is episode number 20 of the Influence podcast, and today I am extremely excited to be able to introduce Bob Doyle. Bob is an international speaker. He is a #1 best-selling author and serial entrepreneur. His flagship program, Wealth Beyond Reason, earned his spot as a featured law of attraction expert in the worldwide phenomenon, The Secret. You've probably heard of it. Bob has several passion ventures in broadcasting and virtual reality. He's also a voiceover talent and the host of the Bob Doyle Show, the Doddcast, which is a personal favorite name of mine, and No More Secrets podcasts as well. A big part of his approach to providing value is live streaming on platforms like Facebook and YouTube to create authentic relationships and provide training in an engaging way while still being able to reach a mass audience without those typical costs associated with live training. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
It's my pleasure, I promise. But I have to know, I have to know right up front, why is the Doddcast? Why does that have a special meaning to you?
I don't know. I just love the name. I just love the name, the Doddcast. And
well, wait till you find out what it's about. I'll let you figure that out.
Okay, I will. I loved it. I saw that. I thought that's fantastic. So I will pick up on that. Bob, thank you for joining me today. I do greatly appreciate it. And I was particularly excited. I guess I'd kind of come back to when we first met, which was around 2 to 3 weeks before Christmas. This year, we're recording this now at the end of 2019, and at an event with Sammy Blundell, which was the Brand Builders Bootcamp, I believe. And
Vision, Voice, and Visibility.
That's the one, yeah. And you were sort of compere of the whole event. Do you want to just give me a little bit of background as to where that all came from?
What, me being the MC there?
Yes, please.
Well, so I met Sammy a couple of years ago on one of her other business ventures, and I went and I spoke on live streaming at that time. And so we've just kind of been fast friends ever since. And so she knew that in addition to my law of attraction stuff, that I do host the Bob Doyle Show, which is much more personality driven, and it's silly and fun. It's more about just me being a broadcaster, which is what I started out as in my career. And so I think when she was just looking at, and because most of the people I guess in her circle are familiar with The Secret, and so my name is familiar, that just inviting me to MC the event would be just a fun thing where I get to do kind of the Bob Doyle Show part of my personality and mix in a little bit of the law of attraction stuff too. So it's just a fun way to do a lot of the things I love with people I enjoy.
Sure. Well, I'd come across you on through The Secret, first of all, the book, and then the movie. And forgive me, I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but I hadn't realized how can I put it? You're probably the most comfortable person on stage that I've seen speak. And that came across straight away. It almost felt to me as if you'd gone on there. You didn't really need much planned. Forgive me if you did, but you did. It felt like you didn't need much planned. It felt like you didn't really have any notes. And the thing that really impressed me, that I was kind of most impressed with, was how you were able to switch very quickly to, irrespective of what happened on stage and who was on and who you were talking to, and if something unexpected came up, you could still kind of roll with it. Where does that come from?
That absolutely comes from live streaming, because when I started the Bob Doyle Show a few years ago, which was just sort of when I was in radio, I had the Bob Doyle Show like 30 years ago, right? So now it's just a live stream version, because now I can do all this video stuff. But because it was live, it's live, I waited forever to launch it, because I kept practicing it because I was doing so much technical stuff with graphics. It was like things just kept, breaking. My CPU would overload, or just something wouldn't work, or the audio would loop and all that. And I'm like, I'm not ready. And then one day I said, you know what? I'm never going to freaking be ready. It's never going to be perfect. Go. Yeah. And the very first show, I had an audio loop. It was crazy, but I just had to learn in that moment. It's all about how I respond in that moment. It's going to determine whether or not people enjoy this or not, whether or not it went the way I wanted to. So I learned through the show to just roll with it. Yeah. And just learn to ad lib and just not sweat it. Yeah. Because, the audience will follow your anxiety curve, and if you have fun with it, if you can laugh, then they can laugh. Yeah. And so I'm sure it was just years of things having crash and burn during live streams, where it was just like, now it was the same potential, but let's just see how I do in front of actual people. So it was a fun challenge. And yeah, really the only notes I had were the bios that I was given, that day of the people. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, just a real exercise in being in the moment.
Yeah.
And paying attention and just trying to stay engaged with the people. Just remember that there are people out there and connect instead of I don't know.
Almost too rigid, else. If you like.
Right. And just like like I've always, my whole style in this whole, ever since I got into this industry, and certainly since I got known, if you will, because of The Secret, is just to look, I'm just me. It wasn't my plan to be in the personal development industry. It wasn't my plan to be, known by all these people. So I don't want to become somebody that I'm not, which I felt like after The Secret, there was this period of time where I felt pulled to be something different. Like now I got to step up and be like Jack and Bob and all the others who've been in the industry for 30 years, right? So it was this really weird sort of, if you look at my videos around that time, sales videos or whatever, before live streaming was a thing, I'm smiling, but I'm pretty rigid. And I'm just kind of announcery and just sort of like trying to be what I thought people wanted me to be. And that didn't last very long. It was because it wasn't fun. I had to start bringing my personality into it. And once I did that, then the fun came back to it.
Sure. I mean, that was the thing that stood out to me. I just really wanted to highlight that because my background as a teacher, I was a teacher for 8 years, and I do believe that has given me some ability to be able to improvise and kind of go with it. But yeah, I always look at people who are really good on stage, and for me, maybe I was one of those people who, knowing you in The Secret and seeing the film and reading the book, then I kind of had this impression of you before I met you, sure. And actually it was almost instantly totally transformed, which I really enjoyed. It was nice to be wrong. Not that it was negative or anything like that, but I just had one idea, and it was just totally the opposite, and that's what I really, really liked about it.
Well, I appreciate you telling me that. Because I've heard that a good bit over the course of time. When I would get off of stage for the first time in front of a group, they're like, "Oh, I had no idea you were this."
Yeah. It really did. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for that. I had intended to talk about The Secret first, but actually we've kind of touched on live streaming a little bit, and the fact that you've talked about how your experience, obviously your background in radio and voiceover as well, and how that's kind of impacted your confidence. Could you? One of the big things I talk about with clients that I work with and through my own training is the value of live video and doing live video. So this is a real big thing for me. Could you talk about some of the real obvious benefit? Well, maybe obvious to yourself, but maybe not so clear to others, about the biggest benefits to actually doing live video and live streaming.
Absolutely. So, these days I feel like more than ever, it could be my bubble, but I think it's true, that people really want to have authentic relationships with the people they do business with. And certainly if it's like personal development or helping them in their life in some way, so getting that whole, we've all heard the whole know, like, and trust. You want people to know, like, and trust you. And so up until live streaming, we were trying to develop that relationship through our writing on web pages or our emails or Facebook posts or whatever we were doing, or video too. But when people do videos, a lot of times they get into video mode. They get into presentation mode. And again, there's sort of a disconnect. But there's something about live streaming, if you'll do it and not bring your speaker mode into live streaming and just be you, with mistakes, with not knowing where you're going, with forgetting what you're saying, with something going wrong, with all of it. People get to know who you are, like who you are, and then finally trust. Now, not everyone is going to like you. The whole idea with live streaming is you get to cultivate the tribe, because since you're being your real you, that the people who do start coming in and telling their friends about you and all that, as your audience grows, they're perfect. So that whole know, like, and trust relationship just happens organically by you just being you. Yeah. And then that develops into being able to, quote unquote, ask for a sale at the appropriate time without having to sell. Sure. Because, if there's so many strategies with live streaming, like if you're an author and you're writing a book, you haven't even started writing it. If you live stream your process and people are watching as you're writing your book and you're getting feedback from them, now they're invested in the book. They're a part of it. So that when the book comes out, it's a celebration already. You've got you've got their first bunch of customers right there, right? I mean, there's no, and then they just spread the word, and it's all, so that kind of stuff is just creative uses of taking advantage in the good way of the relationship, the authentic relationship that you've built with people, so that the whole process, if you're in business of doing sales, doesn't feel like that anymore.
Sure.
So that's just a couple of things. You want me to go on?
Well, I guess I would counter that by asking, you no doubt would be familiar with some of the biggest fears and concerns and drawbacks that people have about getting started. So
yeah,
how do you overcome them?
You practice. It's just like if you're a public speaker or a comedian or anything where you have to get up on stage, you're creating new wiring, you're flexing new muscles. Your comfort's only going to come from doing it, from having those mistakes, from being embarrassed or being able to laugh it off or whatever, but you've got to go through the process. And so, what I do when I'm helping people getting started with Livestream is give them a community where they can practice in a safe environment, like with other people also learning how. Yeah. So that any technical issues, they get used to it in a safe space. They do have an audience of people who are really just built in supporting them and giving them comments. So they learn how to interact. They learn how to practice saying hello to somebody when they come in so that they feel a part of the conversation. I mean, I don't know if you've ever joined a live stream by accident. You're scrolling around and then, boop, oh my God, you're on.
Yeah.
If they say, hey, it's Jake, you're way more likely to stay.
Yeah.
Then just try to hide away because, oh, you've been called out or whatever. So there's just that kind of stuff. And that only comes through live streaming. You can't do that with video, and you can't do that with anything else.
That's amazing, because I, for a long time, have always gone the other way, which is I in my mind, because maybe I'm a bit nervous about doing video or have been nervous about doing it in the past. So I kind of go in with an idea of, this is what I'm going to go on. I'm going to go and say this. I don't want any interruptions, and then I'm going to finish. And then when people pop up, let's say I do an Instagram live, they might pop up. It's like, hi, hey, how you doing? I'm from, I don't know, the States or from India or from Australia, wherever it might be. And I'm thinking, don't put me off almost. So, and I think this is, that's because I'm trying to say these various things. So it's crazy how you're almost saying, go the other way, which is, not to say don't plan, but just really embrace everybody that's joining. Is that the
so let me
go with?
I definitely want to speak to that, because I have gotten, if you watch old Bob Doyle shows or whatever, and even current ones, I get distracted by comments all the time. I get so derailed. But to me, it's worth it to have the interaction and to go down there and to have that connection point, because I can always come back. And if you've built that relationship, you can say, what was I talking about? And they'll tell you. I've done that multiple times.
Yeah.
Way multiple times. And so I don't feel like it takes anything away from my value of the content or anything like that. It just makes me more human. And then I get right back on track and I try to stay focused. And sometimes I will say, guys, I have to look at your comments after. So there's ways to manage it. Yeah. And you don't have to respond every single time someone does something, because obviously then you'd never get done. And one of the great benefits also of live streaming is that you're creating content, possible content. It's a great way to workshop ideas. And so sometimes you want to have chunks of that where you're not interacting so that you can use it again, use it in a video, and the banter between the live stream, the audience would be disruptive. So like if you're on a roll, then maybe you tune out the comments for that time, get that out there so you've got that chunk of video, and then go back to responding, because really there's so much content you can create, or it's just a notepad for great ideas. Live streaming is just another way to add more value out there.
Yeah. So you go live, am I right in thinking you go live, is it every Wednesday?
The Bob Doyle Show is every Wednesday at 8 in the morning, but then I go live, several times, just whenever outside of that.
So that was going to be my next question. Do you have the Bob Doyle Show, as you say, Wednesday? I know you even did it on Christmas Day this year.
Yeah.
Christmas Day, which is, amazing. Do you have a structure around your other lives, or do you have a structure overall, or is it simply Wednesdays and that's it? Kind of. Some of my stuff is seasonal. Like I have a whole series that I do called Under a Tree, which was just the spontaneous thing that happened. One day I was at the park. I live near this park and it's beautiful there. And I would live stream from there, and I was under a tree, and I just, here I am under a tree. And then it just became this whole hashtag under a tree. If you search on Facebook hashtag under a tree, you'll find dozens of these things. That is more regular during more
climate friendly times of year. Like in the summer it gets too hot, in the winter it's too cold. But like in the spring or whatever, I do those like almost sometimes every day, and people they get to know that about this time of day, and I will have a regular audience and stuff. And that's another opportunity for me to it's just really improv is all it is. Like I'll play off of whatever I'm seeing. I may come in there with a couple of ideas I want to riff on and just see how they go. I have been known to bring a note, with little notepads with just the little bullet points that I'll think of sometimes on the way there. Because if I don't, they're just gonna fly out. But sometimes I have ideas like I want to explore this, quote unquote, comedically and see how silly it can get if it works. Not that I'll even ever use it again. It's just that's the fun of it for me. That's the part of me that was around way before The Secret of the Law of Attraction stuff came up. The class clown type of, I just want to see if I can get a laugh.
So what specifically do you focus on now? Because I know that you're putting a lot of focus on live streaming. Obviously, at the program where we saw each other a couple of weeks ago, you talked about a live streaming program. Who is that for, and what specifically does it do? What's the outcome?
It's interesting that because when I spoke there, it was a bunch of conscious entrepreneurs, right, who all have a message. They're perfect for live streaming, right? They absolutely want to get their message across and create relationships and build a tribe and a following. I've just created another relationship with a whole organization of hypnotherapists, and they are the same, where they sometimes live in a bubble, and they don't know how much more reach they can get and how much more impact they can get by just going live every now and then and sharing their knowledge and their expertise with people. So anybody like that who's got a message that they want to get out in the world, if they're an expert, if they're a speaker, if they're an author, they just have something to say. That's who it's perfect for. Who ideally wants to use it for some sort of commercial purpose. Sure.
Okay, perfect. So the program that you have at the moment, you have a course at the moment, or is it a program? What could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so the boot camp. So I've got two different levels where I help people with live streaming. Like when I do my live stream on the Bob Doyle Show, I'm not using my phone. I'm using my computer, higher end software, doing lots of different stuff. That's more of a one-on-one. I'll help you do that kind of stuff. But the live stream boot camp, which is what I was sharing with all of the audience there and like the hypnotherapist, is really getting you comfortable with just live streaming from your phone to create that intimate relationship with the audience. Because all this glitz and glamour can be disconnected if you don't really know how to work engagement, right? I mean, it's a use, because then you get into show mode and you create distance. So, and I like that. That's why I like to mix up doing this, the produce thing with a lot of just the organic phone stuff. And that's what I recommend for people. So it's giving them, like I said, that safe space to, first of all, kind of find their voice. Like, who do they want to be out there? Ideally, it's them, but there is that go live version of them that they're going to present that's, hopefully authentic. And so like finding that voice and what is it that you want to say? Like a lot of people not exactly sure how they would use live stream. So there's a lot of coaching in the program. It's a 30-day thing. It's a 30-day sort of intensive, let's get you clear on your message. Let's get you comfortable with the technology, show you how to do certain things, and also more advanced things like creating, graphic branding for your live streams on Facebook without having to use, by using some of the tools that Facebook has that a lot of people don't know about, or ways to broadcast your live stream, not just to Facebook, but also to YouTube and other video channels. So there's all sorts of advanced stuff that they learn, but really it's about just getting comfortable with going live on a regular basis to establish that professional relationship, and because that can pay for itself over and over and over again. I mean, if you've got content, if you've got a program, if you in any way, gather people up and sell them a product, program, service, or help them, or you coach them, then learning how to be comfortable with live stream and being spontaneous and being yourself and having fun and, knowing how to interact so that you're not just talking at them. I mean, these are skills that they're not necessarily hard to learn, but they're new. And so that 30 days is like, we want you to do something every day to get rewired, because that's, my other conversation that doesn't have to do with this more law of attraction is about the wiring in our head and how it stops us. And that definitely comes into play when it comes to live streaming. People, if they haven't done it, they come up against all kinds of stuff And it's one thing for someone just to say, well, just do it. But then I do bring into this live stream boot camp my 20 years of coaching on that more personal level. Like, so let's find out why is this so challenging for you? Because maybe we have an opportunity for some real transformation here for you, in addition to getting you out there visibly. So it's kind of a blend. You know, you're going to get much more out of being in the boot camp than just knowing how to go live.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you. I about 18 months or so ago, I started doing live videos, probably longer, about 2 years ago. I started doing live video, and I did, I think, 450 days live in a row or something. And for one reason or another, completely stopped it. But I certainly put a big part of my growth, say speaking and teaching and stuff, down to, and just confidence as well, to the live video. So, you know, if that's something that people are keen on and interested in learning more on, and I imagine certainly, you know, one of the big things I talk about with Instagram and social media generally is that real shift to video and live video and building those connections. That for anybody listening, highly recommended to check that out. I could put a link in the show notes, Bob. Is that the easiest way for people to find out more about that particular program?
Yeah. On that page, I kind of go over some, you know, sort of reiterate some of the reasons that we talked about why you want to do this. You know, that we didn't get to. So there's some other stuff there just to kind of like get your head on straight. If you go to the page, you should know this is for me or not. If you feel challenged by it, then you know it's for you, right? But if it's like, it's just, yes, that's the best way to find out.
Amazing. Thank you. I will make sure that I link to that in the show notes, Bob. I'd like to take a couple of steps back, because you mentioned that a component of that live streaming course features or has elements of your own coaching. Obviously, your wealth of experience now and background in coaching and helping people uncover maybe those pain points and those sticking points that are not allowing them to move forward.
Yeah.
How did you? I'm just so interested about how it all came about. I know a little bit about your background. I've done quite a bit of research prior to this conversation, and I know that you kind of gradually transitioned towards sort of the law of attraction. But how did it, like, what was that moment? I'm always really fascinated by a particular moment. Was it just something that flicked in your head, or was it a gradual build up that brought you to, do you know what, this works and I can see it really working. I know why this is so important. How did that come about?
Okay, so it's interesting. I was just talking about the origin story a little bit ago the other day, and that is that in 1990, December 26th, I'll never forget, I just kind of had this. I was actually looking at it was a cigarette lighter, which I purchased not because I smoke, but because it had this holographic sticker around it where the lights were all shiny and colorful. This was like, this is kind of a new thing back then. There was hologram all over the place.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this thing, and something just went boom in my mind about the energetic nature of the universe. And it was like this massive download that I had no words for. And I was like I spent literally, not full time, but off and on the next 10 years, just kind of revisiting this and like, what do I do with this? Like, I know this thing, but I can't prove this thing. And it sounds crazy, this thing, to some people, but not all. And I don't even know who to talk to about this, you know, that kind of stuff. And then when I kind of reached a point in my professional life where I was struggling, because I started in radio, which is what I wanted to do, but then I got disillusioned by it for various reasons and got out of it. But then it was like, well, now what? And I tried to start various businesses, and I just nothing was working. And so that's when I kind of started looking at, well, all the logical stuff I'm doing, tactical, the stuff I'm learning about marketing, and nothing's working. So there must be something else going on. And I've always had this everything is energy conversation going on in the back of my head since, 10 years before, 12 years before. And then I just started looking down more metaphysical paths, and learn more about visualization and meditation and those types of things. And that all eventually led me to just some basic quantum physics principles that made me realize that, really realize the energetic impact of our thoughts. Like, I already knew everything, including our thoughts, and just so much was energy. Like I had that, but I hadn't put it into the context of how it was affecting what was happening in my life. And when I looked at my financial situation, which was bad at that time, and I was trying to get all this stuff going, nothing was working. I had to once I had that aha, or got the information about just how powerful I thought our thoughts are. I had to take a real honest look at what are my thoughts. There's what I'm saying, but what am I really spinning inside my beliefs around success and money and so on. And honestly, it was exactly how it was showing up in my life. That money's hard to come by. There's always going to be debt, and it doesn't matter if you love what you do or not. You just got to do something to make a living, because that's what I grew up with. That was my wiring. So, I had to, if I was going to have a different outcome, I had to change. I wasn't using this terminology back then, but I had to change my wiring. I had to had a different conversation inside about money and success. And so just recognizing that I had been holding on to those thoughts was the turning point, because I knew at that point, well, hey, it's just energy. I can choose other thoughts. And so it was about like doing basic law of attraction stuff, like, vision board type of things, and making lists of what I wanted, getting into the feeling, just that basic stuff, and things just began to shift. And as soon as I saw anything start to work, I started putting together the first iteration of the Wealth Beyond Reason program, just kind of for myself, but also just to share what I was learning. I wasn't positioning myself as an expert at the very beginning. I was sort of a facilitator. But sometime in that, and this is a key, and then we'll wrap up the answer to your question with this, but because it's pivotal in everything I teach now, and but what I decided at that point, at some point, who am I going to be in this? Not just what do I want, but who am I going to be in this whole career and all of this? So I made a decision that who I am is an effective communicator of these principles to as many willing, open minds as I can get to, right? Like I am that, not I strive to be that. I am that now. That's who I am. And that's when like the downloads came, and I just was writing all the time and recording all the time. It was just the content in the program was exploding, because once I owned it, I just, like all of that knowing stuff that I couldn't gel for 12 years, suddenly I had words. Now I had sentences. I could put it together and communicate it. And that's kind of what I became known for, was taking these abstract sort of woo-woo type principles and making them understandable to somebody, like myself, who was sort of naturally skeptical, but wanted to understand how this could be true.
Yeah. Thank you. That, I mean, thank you. That did wrap it all up and bring it all together. So, I mean, we're in I guess, some ways fortunate. I personally think it's fortunate for this question. That's why I put it in there. But now we're recording this, I think, on the 29th of December, 2019. What do you have a particular practice, or is there something that you're going through as we come to the end of not just a year, but the end of a decade? Do you have something that you're putting in place for the new year, the new decade? Do you have maybe time away for reflection? Is it something that you do every day anyway? Are you putting aside a day? How are you? Is there something that you're doing that maybe people listening could model, myself included, could model to go into and best prepare for the new year and new decade?
Man, I don't know if anyone wants to model my rituals, but I mean, because they're kind of cyclical. Like I'll go through periods, like I went through this really long period of where every day I started the day and I picked up Science of Getting Rich and I read it, even though I'd read it over and over and over, but every time I'm finding new things. So it's like I went through like this period of time where I would do this. And then other times, like my ritual was that Tracy and I would get up in the morning and go climb the mountain for a while, and then the weather changed. But something like that was important. There's something that was good for my soul. Another thing, this ritual for me, like I play the ukulele. I love the ukulele, and I have, I want to get good at it. And so I practice that every day, probably a good hour at least every day. And that connects me, to who I am and my creativity and all of that, which is super important, because that's something I'd gotten away from, post Secret. It was all about building this business and, leveraging this opportunity and all of that. So, that, whether I do it at the same time every day, that's not how I do it, but the ritual of giving myself that opportunity to just do something creative that has nothing to do with money, nothing to do with business. Like there's no, it's just so that I can own who I am for that period of time. So if there was any one thing I would say, it's like take every day to really, tune in to the essence of who you are and what makes you spectacular and what you really love, and find a way to do it, and get any conversation around, is this furthering my career? Is this helping? Is it allowing you to tune into who you are? Because that informs everything you do. And if you don't tune in, on a regular basis to your creativity and the essence of who you are. Then you start to become something that you're not, and then you start making decisions out of that. And then, because I've done it, you make business decisions out of that space, and then you're not having fun with the business decisions you made. This wasn't a good relationship. This is not a fun project. I made this from a space of, I've gotten away from me. I didn't ask myself the question, is this going to be fun? So it's like just making a practice out of tuning into who you are every day and what's really the most important.
Thank you. That in itself and what you said, just making those decisions from ultimately the essence of who you are, just resonates perfectly with me. I think just something that I personally do in my own practice is that at the end of the year, naturally I will sort of reflect on the year and such, and almost downtime when I'm not working, I'm not be it marketing, running ads, writing content, doing video, whatever it might be, but actually just taking some time off is probably the time when I get back to me. And then it's like, actually, why am I doing that? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing these things? How does somebody get into that state where they are making decisions which are ultimately best for them and based on their highest values?
It's funny because it's just like everything else. If you're not in the habit of doing that, it's a difficult practice to get into because you're not wired to do it. Again, I just can't stress enough how, if we're not conscious, how completely out of control our life is because of our wiring. We think we're in control, but it's really, we're making decisions based on things that aren't necessarily true, or, like we don't have time to do this kind of stuff. And so whenever we're up against that, like finding time to do the stuff, like what you just said, is something that is so difficult for people. It's so difficult because they feel like they need to earn that. Like I've got to do all of this business stuff first, or I have to achieve this financial goal before I can do any of that. But that's just wiring. That's just what you've been led to believe. And because you believe it, the evidence is going to show up for you that that's true. But you can look out in the world and see that that's not universally true for everybody. Some people just do stuff for themselves because it's time to do it for themselves. And maybe you wouldn't make that decision, but they should be doing this. But look, they're doing it. So it can be done. So it's about anytime you want to change anything about your life, certainly if it has anything to do with your behavior and your habitual ways of being or thinking, you really got to know why you want to make that change. Like you got to know who that person is and the value of becoming that person, because if it's not super strong, if it doesn't inspire you, then it's going to be really easy for your wiring to kick in and just give you all the reasons to stay right where you are in your comfortable spot. Yeah. So that taking the time to know why you want what you're saying that you want and who you're going to be in that, which is really the most important thing, getting clear on that first, because that will inform what you really want. That will help you do because it is going to be habitual rethinking. If you come up against a situation where you habitually go to the negative or that's where you stop, you have to learn to become conscious and go, I'm up, this is the wiring. I'm going to make a different choice. It's not easy to do by yourself. That's why, there's coaches and stuff, but to make that conscious choice over and over again, knowing why you're doing it and how great it's going to feel when you get there. Yeah. That's the way to do it. It's going to take knowing why you're doing it and consistency, just like it took years to get you where you are. But you were being wired unconsciously. Now we're going to do it consciously. Yeah, incredible. So I'm going to break that down even more so. How, for somebody getting started right now, if they know that there are certain elements that they're not happy with, that perhaps they're making decisions which maybe aren't based on, if you like, their highest values, and they're living maybe in other people's values. How do they get started? Is it they need to find a coach? Is it a particular training program? Is it asking themselves maybe better quality questions? How is there sort of a set method? Again, this may come back to what would be your advice there? A huge combination of all of those things, because number one, one way or the other, they got to figure out who they want to be, because that's going to inform everything. They very well may need coaching for that, because that's really the majority of coaching that I do, is helping people get clear on who they want to be, because they're so wired to think that they can only be this, even though their heart is calling to them with this picture and letting them see, that's okay. So coaching is that, but you really nailed a great one, a gold mine, when you said asking better quality questions, because this is something that really has come to the forefront for me, and watching and just looking at how, like coaching clients and everything, everybody's asking, why is this bad thing happening to me? How do I change this bad thing, right? And basically you're just keep putting emphasis on, why is this thing keep happening to me? And when you ask the universe that question and you're stating it in this thing keeps happening to me, well, guess what? The law of attraction point of view, you're just attracting more of that. That's the space. And even if you don't want to go to the energy and the law of attraction stuff, if that's what you're thinking, you're going to behave differently. You're not going to make the same choices as somebody who knows that something good could happen, right? So you ask yourself questions like why is it so easy for me to make 10 grand every day? Why is it so easy for me to generate leads without even trying? Why is it? Those questions, let the universe answer those questions. You don't have to know the answer, but when you get into that feeling of, why am I successful? Why is it that I've achieved this thing? And get into that feeling, that's a whole different vibe that you're putting out there. Because if you ask the other one, why does this thing keep happening to me? The emotional state you're in, the vibe you're in is all negative. It's all in the bad feeling. So again, whether or not you believe in the law of attraction, you're going to be different out in the world. You're less effective, so on, less creative if you're in that negative feeling than when you're in the expansive feeling. So, even if you don't believe it, just try it. You can see where logically it's just better to expect better, and asking the more positive questions. Why are you asking for answers to questions that you want answers? You want the positive answers, so you ask the positive questions.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. The questions, asking better questions, again, I link that back. I recall from teaching, one of the responsibilities I sort of ended up with in the final years of teaching was bringing on new teachers, so training new teachers as they came into the profession. And one of the big things we always worked on was asking better questions. Now, it actually probably was one of my weaknesses, as opposed to, it certainly wasn't one of my strengths, but it's something that I'm increasingly aware of. Is asking better questions. Is that a daily practice? Is that learning from mentors? It
is now. I'm telling you, I had an aha moment on that question thing not that long ago. And I realized that I had gotten into a habit of asking a lot of questions I don't want the answers to. And so I started asking different questions, and I'm telling you, it's major. It shifts your whole being, your physiology changes. Yes, it's a habit. Anytime I ask, I find myself asking some question about why that's happening. I turn it. I must ask myself 3 or 4 outrageous questions a day, easily, and get into the feeling of that. And I absolutely recommend it.
Yeah, I love it. So part of what you've talked about is almost catching yourself in the moment. If it's the old wiring that's running the tape again, and then catching yourself and being aware of that. How have you, are there practices, we mentioned a bit of meditation and such, but are there practices that you have to maintain that awareness?
Well, I don't know that it's a practice so much. It's just that I've made the decision to do it. Like I've just got this it's like I flipped a switch that says detect negative emotion, right? and observe it. Allow myself, and that takes some time, but it's easier and easier with time, because when you first start it, you really feel justified in your negative emotion. You would fight for it, right? And that's another thing is from being a coach is you see people fight for their limitations all the time. No, you don't understand. This is my situation. So when I see that with myself, or I would see that with myself, yeah, it was a little bit harder to get into observation mode and be willing to let go of all of the emotion around it. Yeah. You could completely be emotionless and just observe it from a bird's eye view and go, this is what happened. This happened here. This happened here. I am wired to react like this and think all this negative stuff. How would I like to react? You were asking about a practice. So in defining who you really want to be, when you can get into observation mode and you see that, okay, I'm wanting to respond this way. How would I rather respond? What's the ideal response? The ideal version of me who's abundant and peaceful and loving and all the things I want to be. How did they respond in this situation? Because it's not that.
Yeah.
So you just make something up. You just make something up that's empowering and run that process in your head, and then maybe try it the next time. But the more that you do that, the more that you catch yourself and run different scenarios, you're creating new neural pathways that hopefully you'll put more and more attention on. And the more attention you put on over here, if you don't use them, they wither away over here. And that's the goal.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Is there a particular client that you've worked with, obviously maybe not naming specific, but or is there a particular breakthrough that you have where you've worked with somebody and it's just been almost miraculous, that it stayed with you because you just thought that is a transformation that I can really, that's just quite incredible? Or maybe it's a series.
Yeah, I think when I started doing group coaching, they were happening like crazy.
Yeah.
Like I have memories of just, people making drastic decisions in their lives and going against things that, had kept them stopped for years, like what their parents would think and all of that. I mean, it sounds mild, but some people are absolutely imprisoned by that.
Yeah.
What will my parents think? That one thing. Like, to me, that's not a thing. But to some people, it's a huge thing. And to watch them get up and move out of state and make major decisions that are more in alignment with who they want to be than who they've been, with absolutely no guarantee, no certainty. And then I've watched this, just miracles unfold for them.
Yeah.
Because they just owned it. So it's, but it is, boy, oh boy, I mean, it took a while, for some people, because they just justify their limited thinking. And then the danger is they own it. Yeah, I know I've got this limited thinking thing, or I've just got resistance around this area. That's where personal development, it goes too far, right? Because now they're owning their issue. And now I'm working on my issue. It's like, okay, no. You don't recognize it to just like obsess over it. You recognize it so you do whatever you're going to do to let it go and realize it doesn't need all this attention. And people spend a ton of time working on this problem and not realizing that they're feeding energy into it. I'm a big fan of release techniques like EFT and things like hypnosis to deal with that, but it's to deal with it, not to obsess on it and get stuck on it and all of that, because we do not need to do that.
Yeah. Do you think with social media on the rise over the last few years that there's a danger that there's almost too many experts now? Because I mean, you, again, with The Secret and your background and things and the amount of study and practice that's gone into your your position now, do you look at some people, not necessarily do you see some people and think, where are they coming from? That doesn't make, or almost that they're maybe teaching the wrong things.
So here's my conscious opinion on that, is that, it would be pretty egotistical for me to assume that I'm the one who's right.
Yeah.
I have my position, and I have my position for the reasons I have it, and I share that message. And it resonates with some, but not all. And that is true of everybody else out there with a message. And I think that for someone who is if you've even requested information from any personal development, now you're getting inundated with emails and stuff, and you see it all the time on your timelines because you're in that circle, and all you see is experts everywhere. And yes, I can see where a person would say there's too many of them, but not all of them are for you. Yeah. You just put your attention on the one you want, and if this person doesn't connect with anyone, eventually they'll go away, or they'll just keep doing it. It doesn't have to. So it's we got to be careful about saying there's too many, because how do we know? I mean, there's somebody out there whose life may be impacted by that person we think is freaking crazy, in a positive way. It's not for us to say that there's too many. It's just like, we as experts should do what we do with all the passion and belief and integrity that we can. And just know that when we do that, we're going to reach the people that are appropriate for us, and the other people will learn from someone else, or they won't.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that seems to be, I love that. It seems to be a common thing that people ask me, I get asked quite often, is, these people are saying this and these people are saying that and other people are saying this, and who do I listen to? It's almost the idea of, we're drowning in information, but we're starving for, I've lost it, clarity or something like that. I don't recall. But no, I think that makes a lot of sense. Is there a particular coach? I'm gonna circle around to that actually, as the final question. But is there a particular coach or somebody, mentor, close, distant, that you've worked with, that really moved you forward and helped you progress? And not necessarily just with the law of attraction, but in any area of life,
wow.
in any stage of life.
Well, I'll talk to the personal development side of things and impact, because that is something that I don't have a lot of heroes in this industry. You know, there's not a lot of people I just study and study and study and all of that, even though, I mean, I just picked up Science of Getting Rich about 1.5 years ago and took it seriously, and it changed me. I mean, it fundamentally changed me. So that's one, you know, Wallace D. Wallace, but that's not a coach that I've worked with. But you know, do you know who Andy Shaw is?
No, I've not heard that name.
Andy Shaw wrote a couple of books called A Bug-Free Mind, Using and Creating a Bug-Free Mind. And I know Andy personally, yeah. Okay. So this stuff is, I think, some of the best personal development material out there, because it addresses the thinking piece of it. Yeah. Like how we process stuff. It's the closest thing to a rewiring manual, you know, that I know of. It's a lot, but it's just intelligent. It's grounded. It just, for someone like me, you know, it was pivotal. So I spent a great deal of time just listening to the audio of that over and over and over and over again. And that absolutely helped move me in this direction. The guy who wrote the book, A Happy Pocket Full of Money, which was the book that I read that had my lights come on around the physics of my thought, David Cameron, he was huge and pivotal, but we never really worked together. So I had a lot of sort of, you know, long distance, you know, people who have influenced me in how I approach things, and even people in entertainment, you know, who have impacted and sort of given me permission to do even what I do with the Bob Doyle Show. Hugely influential. I've never met them, never talked to them, but I would definitely refer to them as sort of an indirect mentor. Yeah. You know, so there's lots of people like that in my life, but I don't have a shelf of, oh my God, you got to read everything so-and-so does. Yeah.
Is there one, I'll put up, by the way, sorry, I'll just mention, I'll put show notes, I'll put links to those particular books. So Andy Shaw, you mentioned the two books. Could you just say those titles?
Yes. So Creating a Bug-Free Mind and Using a Bug-Free Mind are the two Andy Shaw things. Brilliant. And then A Happy Pocket Full of Money is the other book.
Okay. David, yeah. Brilliant. I will link to those. And you mentioned the Wallace D. Wattles, the Science of Getting Rich.
Yeah, I actually give that away on my site because I have a special PDF version of it where I have a foreword that I wrote, and then I also one of the programs that I have is a video deep dive into each chapter. Okay. And I do give one away with the book, one of the video deep dives on the chapter on gratitude, which I think is like one of the most important things. We can throw that in the show notes too if you want, where people can get that book. Yeah. Because if they don't have it, it's in the public domain. I'm a total transparency. They could do a search and find it, but I'd like them to sort of get my, you know, like, here's how I want you to approach this book, because I think a lot of people approach it like, oh, it's 100 years old, I wonder what he means, when I'm saying he means exactly what he says. Yeah. And so my coaching around it is to keep you on how simple this can be.
Sure. That's okay. That's perfect. I will certainly link to that as well. Thank you, Bob. Because my next question was going to be if there was one specific book or particular book that maybe you gift most to people, but I think that kind of ties in nicely. So let's go with that one. That can be the gift that we're going to give to people listening today. Yeah. Just two final questions, really, just because I'm very conscious of your time. We've been on quite a while now. Is if there was one. How do you define, or have you defined, your mission, if you like, when you come to the end of your life? How is there a way that you will know that yes, I've mission accomplished, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that the thing I'm most passionate about, the thing that drove me and would make me emotional and really had me just continue my search until I found some sort of joy in what I did with most of my waking hours, it's all about that creative self-expression, because so many people just live such a repressed life. And so the law of attraction is a great conversation to help you with that and the abundance piece and all of that. But you can have a lot of money and all that stuff, but if you're not expressing who you really are out in the world, you will not feel complete. It will not give you what you think it will. It will not. So help if I at the end of my life can learn that because of my silliness or something I said or whatever it is, gave someone permission to be who they were when they were not able to do that before, then that's what I'm here for. So I can do it through helping people live stream. I can do it through coaching a law of attraction. I can do it through being an example on the Bob Doyle Show of look how fun it is to be silly, so it's like, or playing the ukulele or whatever, so that's why I like to just share all the aspects of my creativity, because maybe it'll grab somebody and give them permission to play a little bit bigger game.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. And then the final question, which I ask to everybody who comes onto the show is, and it probably ties in nicely with what we discussed before, but the title of the podcast is Influence. So what does the word influence mean to you?
Yeah, I thought about this a bit, and there's all these quantum ways I can look at it through influencing people's energy and all of these other things. But I think just kind of what we just talked about, it's just like inspiring. I think when I think of the word influence, I'm sure there's different energies you could wrap around it. But to me, I would look at it almost synonymous with inspire. If I could influence somebody to follow their passion, if I could influence someone to follow this piece of their dream or read that book or see that, whatever I think, but that influence takes inspiration. They need to be inspired to do it. I don't want them to just do it because I told them to, because that's just it's not a full thing. I could influence somebody to take an action, but if they're not inspired to do it, they're probably not going to receive the full benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. I think that's a wonderful place to leave it. So, Bob, I can only thank you so much for your time again. It's been an absolute pleasure being with you and working with you. I wish you every success with the upcoming launch of the live stream program. I'll put links in the show notes so that everybody can access that as well. Is there any final things that you'd like to share just before we wrap up?
No, I just think that overall, when it comes to this whole conversation around personal development, making yourself better and so on, is that, and while there is a lot of discomfort in the process because of the rewiring, and it can be easy to classify it as hard work or whatever, it also can be fun. And the sooner that you inject fun into your vision of who you are and what your life is about, the easier and more enjoyable this process is going to be. If it feels laborious, if it feels painful, if you associate transformation with, oh, I've got to go into these dark places, it's going to be slow going, because who wants to do that, right? What if you could create a vision where transformation was fun and that it allowed you to tap into parts of you that just really, really want to come out, and that's where the transformation springs from. And it doesn't have to be this painful dredge through years and years of stuff. Will we visit that? Probably, because it has to do with your wiring. Will we hang on to it and obsess over it? No. We're going to use that to inform what you truly want in your life and put all of your attention there.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob. Where can people connect with you beyond this podcast? Where would be the best place? Social media, website. Where would you guide people?
I am ridiculously easy to find. I mean, you Bob Doyle that Google machine, and I'm all over the place. Although I'm not 82 like it says I am. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I've got my sort of umbrella website, which is meetbobdoyle.com. I mean, there's no shortage. It is not hard.
I love it. And we'll put links to all those again. Bob, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate your time. I do hope that there's an opportunity in the future where we can maybe do a part 2. But thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. And for everybody listening, I do trust that this has been useful. Do give us some feedback. Please get in touch with Bob. Obviously, get in touch with myself as well. But massive, massive thanks one more time to Bob. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And thank you, everybody, this evening for listening along as well.